Well, just as quickly as the big momentum built up, we have lost it just as quickly. EOS has pulled back very sharply, and we have more than invalidated the impulsive upside setup. But that doesn't necessarily mean we don't have some semblance of an upside setup left. EOS is not the only crypto which is suffering from this fate. You have the same situation in other cryptos as well. Actually, most of the cryptos. And we're seeing similar action in the equity space as well with the Dow and the S&P 500. Also seemingly in some kind of a diagonal structure. So this is the 1 hour linear chart for EOS. And we had a very nice rally setup here, kind of non-standard. We had our third wave go much higher than we would have expected, but nonetheless, we had 3 waves up. And then I was calling for a pullback, and the pullback would have been the main determining factor as to what pattern we're going to have. Once you overlap the top of your first wave in your fourth wave pullback, that invalidates that this could be an impulse up. However, it could still end up being a diagonal up, and we are pretty much on our last legs in EOS. Some of the other altcoins have more space before they have to turn around, but EOS, we really can't go much lower than we already have without putting our diagonal in jeopardy. So if we can turn around very quickly and very sharply and make a higher high, we're going to be in very good shape. So if we can get past 317, that would be a very good sign that the rally structure, the upside setup is still alive. Otherwise, if we don't make it there, then we may have to go with red as our primary. So red is calling for this to be a 3-wave correction up. This would be a 4th wave of a larger C wave down that we're going to look at momentarily on the big picture chart. And this pullback has been very sharp, and it looks impulsive to my eyes. It looks like a 1-2, or actually a 1-2, maybe a 3-4, and we are presumably complete with our 5th wave. So this looks like 5 down. You also see the classic divergences with the 3rd wave having the most stretch in the MACD and less so in the 5th wave. So if this does not break through relatively quickly, it doesn't really matter what the structure looks like. If we don't break through this green line, that means that we very likely have a 1 down and a 2 up. And a 1-2 setup is the most ominous sign, because that would mean that we have a setup for an impulsive crash to the downside. Whether it's going to be an actual impulse or an ending diagonal is not particularly relevant at the moment, but we need to get through this resistance zone. We would expect a second wave to go no higher than about where this box is, so 38.2 to 61.8% retrace. However, as I've reiterated in this channel many times, a 1-2 does not invalidate until the second wave retraces past the point of origin of our first wave. So once again, it'll be a 1-2, and we have a downside setup. So there is reason to be worried. This is what you don't want to see if you're a bull. We often look for a very sharp, impulsive pullback, breaking supports, and we've more or less seen that. We haven't really broken the main support yet. That sits at 186. That was the low that we hit on February 24th, but we're getting dangerously close to that point. So the yellow holds on as my primary, but just by a few hairs. We don't really have much margin for error. Shifting the big picture, I haven't really changed anything because everything still stands. The parameters are exactly as they had been before. And EOS is one of the more precarious cryptos in that it came very close to invalidating its overall bullish structure, the multi-year bullish structure, which dates back to March of 2020 with the everything crash, in which we had what I was calling a first wave up and a very deep second wave down. And big picture, this would probably count best as some form of diagonal rally structure. But we can't really think about that right now because we are struggling to get off the ground here. We were doing pretty well, but as I showed on the up close picture, we definitely have 3 waves up. There's no other way to count it. It looks best as an ABC, but I'm going to keep my primary as the bullish green pattern for now, but we need to get going right now. We were doing pretty good rally wise, but our 4th wave has dipped so deep that now we're getting very close to our purple box. EOS is one of the few cryptos that actually hit its, I wouldn't say ideal, but at least into somewhat of an ideal retracement point. More than deep enough. We had a 1-to-1 ratio, not quite, but very close for our A to our C wave. And below is that black hole that I keep referring to. Again, that would be the major support sitting at about 128. I actually have this number tattooed in my brain, even though I have all these other cryptos I'm looking at. That 128, I remember, because if that happens, if we break that, this can no longer count as a 1-2 setup to the upside. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to crash for eternity, but it means that whatever rally we have subsequent to that may not be as impressive as it otherwise would be. So this is a crucial juncture and EOS needs to turn around fast. Our targets overhead remain the same. If we're going to follow green, again, all we have to do is exceed this peak. So what was that, 317, 318? Right there. If we do that, the immediate downside setup immediately invalidates. It doesn't necessarily mean we're out of the woods, because you could end up having your fifth wave, and diagonals are not trustworthy. So you could even interpret this as an A wave, B wave, and a C wave if we get that higher high. So there would be another downside setup at that point, but that's just a part of turning the sentiment around. Sometimes you don't have a clean upside setup, and then once you get rolling, you really get rolling. So keep your fingers crossed if you're a bull. If you are planning to hodl, if you're planning to hold through any kind of correction we have, be prepared, be committed. I will personally be considering taking some chips off the table if we have this bounce into the second wave. I fully expect this to happen because we are quite oversold. Even if we have a downside coming, we really should see a second wave, and preferably it would be relatively deep in the other direction, since this would be a downside setup. And with EOS, we've seen that kind of thing. There's been a lot of violent whipsaw in this last leg of the correction that started in September. Man, that was a long time ago, but lots of whipsaw, lots of up and downs, lots of deep retraces. As a matter of fact, we had nearly a 76.4% retrace of our first wave. If you count this thing as a 1, 2, and then a 3, 4, 5. If we have that lower low, it may be better to identify this as our fourth wave bounce with the fifth wave to come lower. So that would place us here like this. So definitely a possibility. And as a matter of fact, I will make that the official red pattern, because it just makes the most sense. Your third wave is the longest. So you have a clear zigzag down for your A wave, clear zigzag down for the C wave, or I'm sorry, the third wave in the red pattern, and classic textbook diagonal. You'd expect another 3-wave pullback possibly for the fifth wave. So maybe that's the fourth wave, or maybe this is the fourth wave. Whichever one it is, could be an A, B, and a C wave flush to finish on the fifth wave. That would fit the diagonal structure better, because your subwaves would be zigzags, 3-wave patterns. So enough with the doom and gloom. If we can turn this around, like I said, we have pretty much everything else we need for this to be well, we're still managing our upside setup. We still have that MACD divergence. We've fallen deep enough. We had a lot of momentum to the upside. And I keep mentioning equities. You don't ever want to rely on correlations and Elliott wave theory, but most of the major inflection points have been more or less in lockstep with the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones Industrial Average. If we look at our Dow, I was actually demonstrating this on our overall crypto update the other day. We've had a very deep fourth wave here as well. It doesn't look as bad as it does in cryptos, but let me zoom out a little bit more. 15-minute view. Again, this is the Dow Jones Industrial Average, just to represent the equity space. Clearly have 3 up. Looks like a fourth wave, although things have been getting really funky the past few days, and we are still expecting that fifth wave to come. But if this thing keeps going down, it could mean we have a lower low coming, could take us really low down, or there's another alternate pattern in which we are actually setting up a larger diagonal pattern. I went over this in my chain link update earlier today, and that would call for basically this to be a first wave, and then each of the subsequent waves would be three-wave pattern up. So basically it would look just like this blue drawing here, except the subwaves would all be 3-wave zigzags. So that is where we are in EOS. I'm going to have plenty more updates, but please start considering what your own personal strategy is. Are you planning to hodl? Do you need that cash for something else? Do you have another investment you could be putting some cash into? It doesn't have to hurt to diversify if we do get that ominous bear setup. Now, if we blast right through here, things will be golden again. So subscribe so that you don't miss any updates. I'm also going to be making a video possibly, or a series on possibly hedging your crypto holdings using BITO options, BITO, that's the Bitcoin ETF. So you don't want to miss that. If you've enjoyed my video, don't forget to give me a like. Lots of excitement ahead, for better or for worse. Until next time, thank you for watching and happy trading.